Welcome back to our channel for Sherlock Holmes series written by Arthur Conan Doyle, The Blanched Soldier. My name is Holmes, Sherlock Holmes. My good friend Dr. Watson is my biographer. He pens down the stories of my adventures where I am the hero of the case. However, today, on Watson's instance, I am writing about my own adventure, an adventure that will surely interest you, dear reader. It was January 1903 and the Boer War had just concluded. A big, sunburnt Briton from overseas had visited me. He did not know how to begin the conversation, and his awkward silence gave me the opportunity to study him. From South Africa, I see, sir, I said, breaking the silence. Yes, sir, he exclaimed in surprise. Middlesex corpse, no doubt. Yes, Mr. Holmes. I smiled as his expression had changed from surprise to shock. The tan on your face can never be obtained from an English sun, I explained. As you appear to be riding man with a muscular body, as far as Middlesex goes, your card has already revealed that you are from Throgmorton Street. Which other regiment could you possibly join? You see it all, Mr. Dodd stated admiringly. I have trained myself, Mr. Dodd. Now please tell me your story. I leaned back in my chair and lit my pipe. The facts are confusing, he began, but I hope you will decipher them better than me. I joined the regiment 2 years ago in January 1901. Colonel Emsworth's only son, young Godfrey Emsworth, had joined the same squadron. There wasn't a better lad in the regiment, and we became fast friends. We spent a year together fighting side by side before a bullet from an elephant gun injured him in the action outside Pretoria. I received a letter from the hospital at Cape Town. But after that, there has been no news at all, even though he is my best friend. I wrote to his father immediately after the war ended, but received no reply. I wrote again after a few days and received a brief and gruff reply. Godfrey had left for a trip around the world for a year. I wasn't satisfied with the reply, Mr. Holmes, and the entire episode did not seem natural to me. He was too good a man to desert his best friend like that. Then I received the news that he was the heir to a huge fortune and that he was not on good terms with his father, so I decided to get to the bottom of the matter. Dodd's blue eyes flashed and his jaw was set hard as he said this. What did you do? I visited his mother at his home, Tewkesbury, Old Park, near Bedford. Before that, I had written to his mother stating that Godfrey was my friend and I wanted to know more about him. I requested her permission to visit and received a friendly reply. She offered to put me up for the night and I visited on Monday. Tewkesbury Old Hall is in an isolated area and is 5 miles apart from anywhere. It's a massive house in a huge park and it was dark when I arrived. There was a butler called Ralph and his wife. She had been Godfrey's nurse and he had spoken good things about her. Godfrey's mother was an agreeable lady too, and only the colonel looked unpleasant. He glared at me with fierce grey eyes under bushy brows when I was shown into his study. I now understood why Godfrey rarely spoke about his father. Well, sir, he said in a rasping voice, may I know the real purpose behind this visit? Your son Godfrey was my best friend, sir. I simply wanted to know what has become of him. I think I have already told you, sir. He has left for a trip around the world. Kindly pass on the information to all friends interested in the matter. Certainly, I replied. Can you be kind enough to give me the name of the ship he sailed in as well as the date? I shall try to send him a letter. This seemed to puzzle and irritate my old host as he drummed the table impatiently with his finger. I am aware that you are my son's friend, Mr. Dodd, but I must ask you to put an end to these inquiries. They place us in a difficult position as every family has its own secrets. So I reached a dead end, Mr. Holmes, Dodd stated. I pretended to agree then, but deep down I pledged to do something. I retired to my bedroom post-dinner. It was a huge room on the ground floor and I opened the curtains to get a view of the garden. It was a lovely night with a bright half moon. Ralph, the old butler, entered with a fresh supply of coals. It was very cold, sir, so I thought you might need these for fire, he said and hesitated before he left the room. Beg your pardon, sir. I heard what you said about young Master Godfrey at dinner. Did he carry himself well at the regiment, sir? There wasn't a braver man in the regiment. He saved my life too in the war. That's Master Godfrey, sir. He was a brave and fine boy. I jumped to my feet, Mr. Holmes. Dodd continued his tale. Wait a moment. What do you mean he was? You talk as if he was dead, man. What is this mystery all about? What has happened to Godfrey? I don't know, sir, he said and tried to leave the room, but I held his hand. You have to answer one question before you leave, Rolf. Is Godfrey dead? Old Ralph could not meet my eyes, but his answer was a terrible one. I pray to God he was, he exclaimed and ran out of the room. It was clear now that my friend was in some great danger. The strict old man had hidden his son from the world. Godfrey was a reckless young man and could be easily influenced as he trusted people too easily. Had he fallen into bad company? As a friend, it was my duty to save him. But first, I had to find him. I was thinking about all these things when there he was. I saw Godfrey Emsworth standing out the window. His face was pressed against the glass and he was pale as death. Never have I seen a face so white. When my eyes met his, he turned and disappeared. I exited through the window immediately and ran down the garden path to find him, but the light was poor outside. I heard something move ahead of me and followed the sound, calling out Godfrey's name. I had given up when I heard a door close ahead of me in the dark. I returned home as there was nothing to be done that night. The next morning, I requested the colonel and his wife to allow me to stay for another night. They agreed surprisingly. I was sure Godfrey was hiding somewhere close by and wanted to find him. I wanted to find the door that I had heard close first. I discovered many outhouses in the garden and a bigger building where the garden ended. I was sure this was the place, and as I moved towards it, a small bearded man in a black coat and hat opened the door. I was surprised when he locked the door behind me and put the key in his pocket. Are you a visitor here? He asked in surprise as he spotted me, and I explained that I was Godfrey's friend. Almost embarrassed, he requested me to revisit when Godfrey returned. He left, but when I turned, I saw him spying on me, half hidden behind the trees. Later that night, I crept out of the window and made my way to the strange lodge. The windows were shut, but a faint light emerged from one of them. I was lucky as the curtains hadn't been fully drawn and I could peek into the room. A bright light and a blazing fire illuminated the room, and small bearded man was seated opposite to me, reading the paper and smoking pipe. Although the second man was seated with his back to me, I recognized those familiar broad shoulders immediately. It was Godfrey. Suddenly, someone tapped me sharply on my shoulder. I turned to stand face to face with Colonel Emsworth. This way, sir, He ordered softly, and I followed him back to the house reluctantly and into my bedroom. "There is a train to London at 8:30, he informed me. "The taxi will be here at 8. I tried to apologize, but old man was furious and would not listen. "You have betrayed our trust. You arrived as a guest and became a spy. I do not wish to see you again," he declared, and simply exited the room. "How many servants were there in the house?" I asked Todd. "Only the old butler and his wife," he replied. "There was no servant in that other house?" "No, Mr. Holmes," he said. "Only the small bearded man was there." "Did you see any food being carried there?" "Yes, I saw old Ralph carry a basket and go to this house." "Did you happen to speak any of the locals, Mr. Dodd?" "Yes, I spoke to the station master and the village innkeeper. Both of them insisted that Godfrey had gone for a trip around the world." "I shall accompany you to Tewkesbury Old Park tomorrow," I said. We picked up an old gentleman as we drove together to Euston. "This is an old friend of mine," I said to Dodd. "His friend will be invaluable to us." Dodd was surprised but did not object to my methods. When we reached, I asked my elderly friend to remain seated in the car till I called him. The colonel opened the door himself and shouted at Dodd furiously. "Didn't I warn you not to come here? Go away and never show your damned face here again." "I refuse to leave till I hear from Godfrey's own lips that he is all right," my client said firmly. The colonel ordered Ralph to call the county police immediately. "Ask the inspector to send 2 constables," he instructed. "Wait," I interrupted. "Any interference by the police will actually invite the disaster that you so fear." I took out my notebook to scribble just one word on it. I handed it to the colonel. "This is what has brought us here," I stated. "How on earth did you know?" he gasped. "My business is to know things," I stated. The colonel sat quietly in deep thought for a moment. "Well, you shall see Godfrey if you wish to," he declared. "But remember that you forced me." We reached the mystery house together and entered. "Godfrey, old man," Dodd exclaimed, as he rushed forward but was ordered to stay back. "Keep your distance, Jimmy," Godfrey ordered. "Stay away from me." "Well, you might stare. I don't quite look the smart Lance Corporal Emsworth of B Squadron, do I?" His appearance was really strange, as whitish patches had bleached his skin. "This is exactly why I don't meet visitors," Godfrey informed his friend. "Ralph told me you were here and I just wanted to take a look at you. I wish you hadn't spotted me." "Tell us what the matter is," Dodd insisted. "When I was hit during the morning fight outside Pretoria, I fell off my horse and fainted. The elephant bullet went straight through my shoulders. 3 of us had got separated from the others and the other 2 were killed. When I regained consciousness, a cold night had fallen and I was rather weak. I spotted a house nearby and dragged myself along the ground towards it. I was barely conscious and all I have is a vivid memory of ascending the steps slowly and entering through a door that was wide open. I came to a large room with several beds and flung myself on the nearest bed. Soon I was fast asleep. I woke up next morning as the African sun flooded the room through the curtainless windows. A dwarf with a bulbous head stood over me, murmuring excitedly in Dutch. A small group was assembled behind him, and I shuddered as I stared at them. None of them appeared normal, and each was deformed or disfigured or swollen in some way. None of them could speak English, and the creature with the swollen head started dragging me out of the bed. All of a sudden, an old man entered the room and ordered him to stop in stern Dutch words. He was clearly in charge. "How on earth did you arrive here?" he asked me in amazement. "But wait, I see you are wounded. I am a doctor and I shall treat you first, he declared. But you are in greater danger here than on battlefield. You have come to a leper hospital and slept on a leper's bed. Do I need to tell you more, Jimmy? Godfrey asked Todd. The poor lepers had been evacuated before the war and had been just brought back. Their medical superintendent had told me that even though he was immune to the diseases, he wouldn't have dared to sleep on a leper's bed like me. He shifted me to a private room, treated me with the utmost kindness, and shifted me to the general hospital at Pretoria. I saw these terrible signs on my face only after I reached home. We had to keep this a secret for fear of my being ostracized by society. Even you had to be kept in dark. I cannot imagine why my father has brought you here, Jimmy. This gentleman forced me to. Colonel Emsworth pointed at me. He unfolded the scrap of paper on which I had written the single word, leprosy. I thought he should know the full story if he knew so much, the colonel explained. Who knows if any good can come out of it? I stated as I turned towards the small bearded man. I am given to understand that only Mr. Kent has examined the patient so far. I have no doubt about your competence, dear sir, but I am sure you will agree with me that a second opinion is most valuable as far as this case is concerned. I understand that you have avoided doing the same so far for fear of exposing the secret. You are right, Colonel Emsworth, interrupting me. I thought so, I said. Hence, I have brought with me a friend who can be trusted completely. He is known as Sir James Saunders. Mr. Kent was very happy indeed on hearing my friend's name. I shall be proud indeed, he said. Sir James was fetched to study the patient while he sat in Colonel's study. I explained everything here. When the case was first presented to me, 3 explanations seemed possible. Godfrey Emsworth was either in hiding for a crime, he had gone mad, or he had contracted some disease. I could think of no other explanation. Crime was ruled out as there has been no reports of a crime from the district. Insanity was a strong possibility as a young man had a keeper who locked the room when he exited. But insanity was ruled out as the young man had come out to take a look at his friend. By the secrecy then, the third possibility seemed most likely. Leprosy is common in South Africa and this young man might have contracted it there, and this must have placed the family in precarious situation. Secrecy was important here, and a faithful medical person, if we well paid, could be found to take care of the patient. The door suddenly flew open and great dermatologist strode in. He shook Colonel Emsworth by hand happily. I have good news, he stated. It's not leprosy. What? The colonel explained. It's a well-marked case of pseudo-leprosy, also known as ichthyosis. Sir James Saunders explained. It is a slice-like infection of a skin that is curable and non-infective. Yes, Mr. Holmes, the coincidence is remarkable. You were listening to Sherlock Holmes series. If you have enjoyed this audiobook, then please subscribe to our channel. Thank you for being a word-teller listener. We will be back with another audiobook shortly. Until then, happy listening.